can clearly articulate our testimony, our experience with God. And I will speak into this a little bit more. But back in 2004, I will not say what my age was, but I was young. In April 2004, there was an evangelist called Brian from the US. He came, had a crusade, and he preached the gospel. And I was convicted, and I went to the front and gave my life to Jesus. And that is quite very clear for me, that is the point at which the change began. Do you have a testimony? There are three words that I want us to discuss on today. One is assumption. Verses 7 to 9. Verse 10 to 12. Acknowledge. And then verse 13 to 15. Assurance. Assumption, acknowledge, and assurance. I don't know whether it is me, but I tend to be keen on when I hear people talk about somebody, and mostly negative things. And so there's this one time I'm in a particular setup or community, and I get to hear people talk about this particular person, and they say, this person is so bad. Have you ever been in such a situation where you get to some place and what you hear about a particular person is very bad stuff only? And so somehow I developed keenness to understand, why is this person called bad? Why have they labeled this person bad? And so I kept asking, you said so and so is bad. What has this person done to you? And then somebody's fidgeting around. They really don't have a particular solid reason to back up their statement. So and so is very bad. And then at the same time, I realized, okay, even those who are joining the community who are new, me inclusive, when we get that kind of report, at the back of our minds, we already have a wall developed towards this person. So in my mind, he's bad because people have been saying that person is bad. Unfortunately, that's the kind of society we live in, where people are not interested to get to know people. Instead, what I had is enough. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes there are very, very solid reasons as to why people will say so and so is bad. So it's possible. Jesus meets the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4. Now, in this meeting, just the word Samaritan woman presents two problems. The first issue is the feud that has been there between the Jews and the Samaritans. So first of all, Samaritan is the problem. So technically the Jews viewed these folks, the Samaritans, as second-class people and avoided them for whatever reasons that mostly were moral. And by the way, this feud dates back to many centuries ago, when the Assyrians allowed non-Jews to settle amidst them. And innocently, there was also the intermarriage that happened between these foreigners and the Jews. That was a problem. That was an issue. And so many, many years later, this keeps happening. The feud is real. The hostility is real between the Jews and the Samaritans. Now you can get that story in 2 Kings chapter 17 in case you want to follow it up. This is Christ's time. Many centuries have passed, as I mentioned. And interestingly, it was bad to the point that for these guys to get to Galilee from where they are, Samaria was a shortcut. But they said, we will not pass there. We will go all the way around and get to Galilee. That's how bad it was. So no Jew would say, this is the shortcut. Let me go through that. Interesting, isn't it? Sounds African. I come from a family where we've been taught lots of restrictions. And if you want to get to hear more, see me later. But we were told, do not talk to so and so. Reason? Just listen. I am older than you. Not that we want to argue, not that we want to fight, but what is the reason? Some of these things have existed many years ago and we have no account, but because we've chosen to live in them, it becomes difficult to break free or even to break through. So the issue was Samaritan. The other issue most probably was the word woman. Now there's so much to do with cultural prohibitions against women, and the Jews and those guys, they had lots of issues around that. So what is Jesus doing? Interestingly, should he have followed the Jewish history and said, because I was born and I found my people not communicating, not being nice to the Samaritans, should I do the same? Breaks the point, or rather beats the point for why he came, doesn't it? Jesus approaches this woman and says to her, give me a drink. Very simple words that have a lot of issues. But again, clearly this breaks cultural inclinations that existed, or the feuds or the problems that existed, and the impossibilities that were set up or brought about the feud that they had. Just in a second, let's think about this. Our cultures, our ethnic affiliations. Guess what? For a Christian, do they really matter? Does it matter that I belong to group so and so? In response, it didn't matter. I want us to take note that Jews were so religious. These guys knew the law. They have studied the law. So you can say they are the Christians of that time. But then the problem here is their religion gets in the way, and it becomes more of a practical kind of lifestyle rather than what Jesus was seeking for. So in response to this problem, did it matter that the Jews were religious? It did not. Is it about their religion? No. Was it about their do's and don'ts? No. Jesus points out explicitly the bigger picture. Relationship. Praise the Lord. I was born in a Christian home. My mother a pastor, my dad an elder in the church. Committed Christians. And as a young person, I joined the music team. Very early age, I was leading worship. And by the way, to me that was enough. That I go to church, that I'm part of the worship team, that I'm in a choir, I'm in a band. I used to dance, by the way. But I don't, even if I tried to. But that wasn't enough, church. It was simply an assumption. I assumed I'm a Christian